And hey, if you put any restrictions on creativity, you're going down the wrong path, man, because the most amazing creative things throughout history came from people stepping outside of the box, taking chances, taking risk. And Apple needs to take more risk, I do believe, for the creative types. They've already got the consumer market licking their backsides like lollipops. They've got that market covered. But the creative types, take the reins off, man. Let us go. We want to go.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex, from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And I am super excited to bring you yet another episode of this podcast because on today's show, we get to speak with some of the leading content creators in the iOS space. And in fact, these content creators were actually touring musicians for many, many years before they ever had a YouTube channel. So I think it's going to be really great to hear how these two different experiences contrast each other and what they're doing now to balance out both creating content and new music. Plus, we'll get some advice on how musicians and producers can take their music full time, positively deal with mental health issues, and so much more. And now finally, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists so much for being here. There was just so much useful information and knowledge dropped from these very experienced producers and artists, and I know I learned a lot, and I hope that you will too. Alright, and now without further ado, let's get right into the 6th episode of this podcast, and I very much hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the 6th episode of the Mobile Music Roundtable podcast, right here on the Mobile Music Pro channel. I am super excited as usual to have our guests on today because today we have a bunch of content creators. And for those that have been a part of their community, they know how hard they work every single day. So I'm just really glad to have them on and maybe try to cross-pollinate our communities a little bit so everybody can kind of see how amazing these people are. So first, let's just go around the roundtable and ask everybody how they're doing. So Jade, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking. Really excited to be on the show today.
Absolutely. Jade Starr has another fantastic content creator and has a great YouTube channel, so hopefully everybody goes and subscribes. Then we have Mr. Pete Johns, who just recently crossed over 100K subs on his channel, so we're all kind of just kicking it in his shadow a little bit. So Pete, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Really good to be here, Vortex. Thanks for having me on the show. I love the roundtables. Love having a chat with a bunch of other people and getting different points of view. So appreciate you inviting me on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Pete, of course, has a long-running channel, so guys, make sure you check out all of his videos. Tons of great content, and I don't know how Jade and Pete do these daily videos, but they definitely do it, and they do it amazing because every video is unique and tons of gems and information. So finally, let's go to Mr. Jamie Mallender. How you doing, Jamie?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Always up for a chat about some iOS music stuff. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. All these people, of course, are experienced iOS creators, but beyond that, they are all artists and musicians and producers on top of it all. So I don't know if you guys know, but not every producer can sing and play multiple instruments and perform and be in front of thousands of people. So I'm just really humbled to have everybody here today because, of course, most of us are just our lonely bedroom producers, but of course, these guys have amazing history. So let's get into that a little bit first with our very first topic. So Jade, we'll start out with you and then we'll go back around. But most of us here are from the corporate world. We've kind of started our journeys just having regular day jobs and such, even though our love of music has never gone away. So maybe you can have some advice to some other people, give some advice to people on people who feel like they're stuck in their day jobs and don't have enough time to make music. What would you say to them?
Do what makes you happy. Absolutely. Have the courage to step away from it. And because, working in a corporate environment, it's a challenge. 9-to-5 jobs are a challenge. They put money on the table. That's the great thing about them. Dealing with employment with other people, I never really was good at that myself. But all the experience that you gain from within what you're currently doing is enough to really break out and do the things that make you happy. Because, don't get to that point where you wake up one morning and go, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But even if you feel like you have got to that point, there's always time to change. It's never too late. You can teach an old dog new tricks. I believe that because I'm an old dog and here I am now on YouTube and continuously trying to teach myself new tricks. And I think that's important to remember that, and I think I see it too, like on my channel with so many artists I have on when I interview them, the common thread is I started out making music. I was at school. I was learning music. I was playing in bands, and then life got in the way. And a lot of those artists now have realized that life did get in the way, but it doesn't always have to be in the way. So yeah, my advice is always to, if you want to step away and try something new, go for it. You can make it happen. But like anything, it's going to take hard work, and you have to be committed to it. And you got to, I think when I started the YouTube channel, I talk about this on my channel a lot. The reason I started it was first the inconvenience, which was the pandemic that kicked off. And I needed a reason to get out of bed due to my health. So I still have a little tag up on my TV, which I look at every day. You're doing this YouTube channel to get out of bed. And I think if you have a goal, and it's a concrete goal in what you want to do, and you stick to that, stick to your guns, you're going to succeed, like with anything in life. So yeah, if you want to ditch that corporate world, I know Pete ditched the corporate world. I know you ditched the corporate world, Vortex. Ditch that sucker. Just do it.
Absolutely. And, it does take a lot of courage too, because it can become, very, very comfortable to have that day job sometimes too, because, you hate it every day, but you know what, that paycheck comes every week or every 2 weeks, and, you get a little addicted to it. You get a little bit comfortable, and you get a little bit soft, and it can be hard to kind of pull away out of that rut, as I've heard from a lot of different people. And so I'm so glad that there's channels like yours and others here that really encourage people to be able to start making music, even if it's only a little bit a day. You have to have some type of creativity in your life. And so, music is so important in that way. So fantastic comment, Jade. Really great answer. Let's ask Pete next. Pete, what is your comment on this? Because again, there is so many people out there that even have full-time jobs that don't even want to do music full-time. They just want to do music more. Like maybe they don't even want to do it full-time, but they do want to do it more, and they kind of feel stuck. What do you say to those people, Pete?
Yeah, look, I think many of us, I definitely was a weekend warrior. I was a nothing warrior. As Jade said there, life got in the way. I reached a certain age. So I think a lot of my story is similar to a lot of people. I was in sort of my teenage years, my early 20s, played in bands and wanted to be a rock star, and then realized that don't pay the bills. So you got to go out and get a job, and then you get a mortgage, and then you get a cat and a dog and a family, and then suddenly you're 40 years old and you're wondering what you've done with your life. But no, I think for folks that are looking to create more, my biggest tip is to find those windows of time, to actually set it aside and find the windows of time where you can create. Because I think what we get into this habit of, you work your day job and you've got your family life and whatever, and then you're just so exhausted at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and watch Netflix. And then you watch 2 hours of Netflix, and it's like, what about 1 hour of Netflix and 1 hour of shredding? Or what about 30 minutes of Netflix and an hour and a half of music production? So I used to be a big gamer. I used to love playing video games, and I basically had to quit cold turkey and stop playing video games because I realized that wasn't helping me achieve my goals, but doing music would. So, I think sometimes it's about making those little sacrifices that are, you might not get that little mini dopamine hit that you get in the moment, but longer term, it's going to work out for you. And I kind of continued along the theme with the whole YouTube channel thing, where it started out with me just learning how to use GarageBand. And I just wanted to find tutorials to learn GarageBand on my iPhone and my iPad, and couldn't really find what I wanted. So I learnt myself and started making videos, and that I didn't even have any comprehension at that point that it would turn into what it is now, and that I'd quit my day job and do this full time as a permanent gig. So, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't have to be that. It just has to be something. And I think just working out how you can inject some sort of music into your life is the way to do it. And even if it's 15 minutes a day, or even if it's 30 minutes a week, whenever you can find that time, just make that time. Talk to your family. Tell them this is going to be be a bit selfish. This is going to be my time. You can have me in 30 minutes time, but for the next half an hour, you're going to hear lots of loud, weird noises coming from my bedroom studio, and you're just going to have to accept it, and then I'll be back afterwards. So yeah, that's kind of my time. That's a long way of saying, just do it.
It's just a great point. I mean, just to set aside a little bit of time, right? Just to set a little bit of time, even if it's 15 minutes, even if it's 30 minutes, because it can be really easily to just go binge a Netflix show. I mean, that's the easy thing to do, right? Making music is difficult. It's fun, but it is work. It's still work nonetheless. And so you do have to set aside those little bits of time if you do want to improve. And, even if you're not trying to improve, just trying to, make some sounds, just make some sounds, because then you can even learn that way as well. And it can be very cathartic. And, especially if music is in your blood and you really need needed to kind of survive and kind of set your moods correctly, you've really got to at least try for a little segment per day. So great advice, Pete. Couldn't have said it better myself. Let's go to Mr. Jamie Maunder. Now, Jamie, I don't think you're full-time with your channel just yet, but you are, of course, have been full-time with music for many, many years. So what would you say to people still with, the standard office job? What would you say to people who want to get out of their rut and really want to take their music to the next level?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a rock and roll megastar. And by the time I left school, I hadn't achieved that. So I had to get a day job, which obviously I hated. And all I thought about the whole time was, I want to get out of this and I want to do music full time. And although my goal was to be a musician more than a producer at the time, I think exactly the same things apply. So what I did was, whilst I had the day job, I worked every minute I could to get as much work musically as I could, to learn everything I could possibly learn and build my reputation. Because the most important thing, if you want to work in music, the most important thing is not your skills. It's not, this amazing beat that you can produce or that you can play 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's boring things like getting things done on time, being reliable, being honest, being a fun, easy to work with person. And so I worked really, really hard at building a good reputation. First of all, just like on the local music scene. And I got lots and lots of work. But I was always at that point of got nearly enough work to quit my day job, but the safety of the day job was very, very difficult to leave, because I was always thinking, I've got nearly enough work. Is it time to take the plunge yet? And I always shied away from it. But then one day when I was 30, and I'm 50 now, so this is 20 years ago. So my boss said something to me that really, really pissed me off. So I just said, right, that's it. All right, there's my notice. And when I took that plunge, when I actually walked out those doors and I was free, my whole time was free to do what I wanted to do with my life. It was so much easier to build on that work that I'd already established and to be able to take it to the next level so I could make enough income to support myself. And, I've done 20 years now of, I support a family by playing music, recording music, teaching music. And although I guess I'm here because I have, a YouTube channel where I talk about a lot of iOS stuff, that's actually the smallest part of my income. I'm working on that, but yeah, I've found that making a success of being a professional musician is being versatile and doing more than one thing musically to make enough money to survive and not have to go back to day job land.
And that's a great point too, because every single producer or musician these days, they all have multiple things in order to survive. And you have to have multiple revenue streams in order to survive in this crazy times, especially with, inflation going like crazy around the world. It's just all the prices, everything is getting more expensive. So to have multiple revenue streams is key to really being an independent musician and independent producer. If you talk to any producer today, they'll be like, well, I have a little bit of YouTube income, right? I have some sample packs on a website. I do some teaching, maybe some gigs on the side. So all of these little things, they all add up, but it is possible to actually make enough money in music to go full time, even if you don't actually go into the industry, right? There are all of these ways now, thanks to the internet, to be able to to be more independent than what you used to had to be, which was just sign up with a label and sign your life away, basically like signing up with a bank. So, but now, of course, we have much more choice. So great points, Jamie. Let's start with you then on the next question again. So this is going to be a little bit more of a fun one because, we have international viewers and and everybody is from all sorts of places. Our audience is from many different countries around the world. So first, Jamie, I want to ask you, and then I'm going to ask Jade and Pete this too. But what do you think is something that people should know about producers and musicians from the UK? As a global citizen, as a U.S. citizen, what should other people know about musicians and producers from the UK?
About musicians from the UK?
Yes.
Well, that's a very, very interesting question, because in the UK, of course, we have a very, very rich history of music. When you look at the huge bands globally, it really is quite uncanny just how much of it came from here. I think the thing is that we do have quite the gig scene for local musicians. We don't have anything. We don't have a very great scene in this country for sort of intermediate musicians. There's a great scene for local bands to get out there and do their stuff. There's a reasonable scene for original artists, mostly in the north of England, though it's much better in the north than it is in the south. And we have some fantastic venues for bigger bands. What we like here is something in between, I think. There doesn't seem to be much of an industry, really. That's probably the same globally, I guess. But one thing that's nice about the UK is because it's such a tiny place, that if you were thinking, like some band from overseas, if you were thinking about doing a tour somewhere, and you were thinking about planning your first tour, and it's not easy getting all the venues signed up and then the accommodations and everything. The UK is a relatively small place, so travel is not a major obstacle. You could book several gigs, sort of up and down the country, and make that work a lot more easily than if you were thinking about maybe going and touring somewhere, like the States.
Absolutely.
There are other countries in Europe that are like that, but the UK probably comes out on top with that.
Absolutely great points. Yeah, I just love to hear all these, these tips and these interesting stories about these countries, because again, we have viewers, all of us have viewers all over the world. So it's really interesting to me for sure. So now let's go with Pete, and I'm going to ask Jay the same question too, because you guys are both in Australia. What is something that people internationally should know about the musicians and producers in Australia?
The really interesting thing, Vortex, is that I know less about the Australian music scene than I know about the international community when it comes to, because so much of what I do is online, and it's weird because people that meet me here in Adelaide in Australia, they say, "Oh, do you know Joe Bloggs? Do you know Tom Smith in this band and that band?" And I feel bad about this, but especially for the last 2 years, I've been so distant from the local music scene. 20 years ago, I could have told you more. And I loved, like back in the day, the grunge bands that would play at the pubs, and I was sort of involved in that sort of scene. But these days, yeah, unfortunately, the Adelaide music scene has kind of dried up a little bit. The introduction of poker machines here in Australia had a massive impact on live venues and live gigs. So bands don't have places to play because pubs just want to put in 40 poker machines instead of actually having a stage for local live bands. So it is a challenge for an actual gigging band. And I think that's to the point we were making in the previous question. It's why I don't think as a musician, if you are just going out and hoping that you make enough money from playing a Friday and a Saturday night every week, you need to diversify, because there's not going to be enough to do that in, I think, any scene pretty much in the world now. There's very few places where you can just be the old school gigging musician that you play 5-6 nights a week, and you're just the guy that plays guitar that people call on, and you'll make a couple $100 every night and you'll piece that together, and then that's your job. So I think that's definitely a challenge. But yeah, I think the interesting thing about the music scene is so much of it is now online, and I think folks that are doing well, even if they're sort of in that old school mindset and they're 40, 50 years old, like a lot of us here are, then if you're only thinking that the only way you can do that is to go out and busk or go out and gig, you're missing a big piece of the pie here online, because I can do a live show online to 40 or 50 people, and live here on YouTube and live on Facebook and live on Twitch really easily. But a lot of people are thinking, hey, unless I can engage with my own local community, that's the only way I can share my music. we're now so global and it's so easy to share globally that's my recommendation for folks, is to just get online. And then like most of my people that watch my channel are in the US, Canada, the UK, India, the Philippines. Like Australia is 3% of my audience. So really, I don't think not the local scene doesn't matter, but I think there's so much opportunity you have now being online.
Yeah, such a great point. We're definitely not saying that, the local scene doesn't matter or anything like that. But guys, the opportunity now available to you over the internet is just unprecedented. But of course, if you can, still try to, support your local scene, of course. But it's just like you said, Pete, the opportunity, the insane, endless amount of opportunities online now are just kind of fascinating. And, even channels like myself and Jamie that haven't done sponsored videos yet, when we get a little bit bigger, we will be doing, sponsored videos for sure. And that's yet another way that on YouTube that, that you can make revenues with sponsored videos. One of the other ways that you could do, of course, is, but there's one of the many ways that you, of course, you can use the internet to make money. But yeah, absolutely great point. Let's go to Jade. That was really interesting what Pete said. Like there's only 3% of his audience is coming from actual Australia. So is that the same with you, Jade? What is your comments on this?
Yeah, definitely. YouTube audiences, just starting there. Australia's my smallest market. It's bizarre, but it is what it is. Probably the times I choose to do the shows is part of the reason, because I know there's a bigger audience from watching other people's channels before I got into this. But from being a moderator in Pete's chat for a long time, I got to see the lay of the land before I kicked into YouTube. As a touring or live performer myself, I've been doing this. I'm like Jamie Mallender. I've been playing live gigs since I was 14 years old. I've played festivals. I've been a busker for like 6 years. And toured all over Australia, across all the states, played gigs in the US, UK, Thailand. I've toured. I've done a lot of that, been signed to record labels. The industry's definitely changed over the years. Just focusing on Australia first, it's very different from state to state here. Victoria, where I live, was always the place to be if you're in a band, because we had the best culture for live music. Sydney was always a toilet, and it still is. Sydney was one of the first states to really bring in the slot machines. I'll use slot machines just for the international artists who don't know what poker machines are, but yeah, they really just filled every venue with these slot machines, and it was cutting into artists' pay. There was no bands. And then they started bringing in these duet acts of like a keyboard player and a guitarist who just did covers. Sydney was so into that big time. Brisbane's a lot smaller, but they have a very concentrated scene, like in the Valley, where that's where all the venues mostly are in Brisbane, or the Gold Coast. Adelaide's I love Adelaide scene where Pete is. I've played lots of shows in Adelaide. I got to a point before all this, inconvenience happened and the world shut down. I prefer playing festivals. Festivals are great, and I played a lot of LGBT festivals, being trans myself, and they don't necessarily pay as well, but festivals, they can afford to fly you in and put you in a hotel so you feel like a rock star. And that is much more important than getting paid, in my opinion, because I'm used to being poor. But what I found touring overseas too, when I went to the US, I lived in the US for 2 years. Oh, I really love playing shows in the US. Just being Australian meant people wanted to come and see what I was about. I was like a new shiny toy. I played gigs in Chicago and Minneapolis. It was amazing. Even in Thailand, I've got white skin, so I'm like something interesting to go look at compared to every other open bar that has, a brown skinned person singing Guns N' Roses. It's just what it is. But yeah, look, but I'll finish on this. The place I made the most money, and the place I actually, being on stage is great. I love being on stage, but the place I really loved performing music in Australia was busking. And you may be scratching your head over this, but I had a particular spot for quite a few years, where every Friday I'd go down to this little train station, Flinders Street train station, into this tunnel, and I would play for 3 hours straight. A mixture of covers, my own songs, and you're actually getting this real feedback of people walking past, and they'll stop and they'll throw money in. And I'm dead serious here. From 3 hours work, and I did it Monday and Friday every week for like 3 years solid, I would come home with $500 in cash. The real money was in busking. Now I think it would be a very different situation with what's going on in the world. Nobody's handling money anymore. So I feel for people who are busking. It's hard. So I've moved to online as well. And I do a live performance every week on my channel. And I look at it like, if I'm going to play covers, I let people know in the chat, I'm playing covers. I'm going to get copyrighted up the wazoo. So please super chat me in the comments, because even if people watch the replay, I'm definitely not going to make any money from it. So I look at it as, this is a once-off gig. And if you want a super chat, this is my payment for this gig. I don't need to have revenue coming in for it later on. So, you know, you can adapt to these things. We do live in the future, as Pete says all the time. And I'm super stoked that we have that. I really hope things open up, because I played my first gig again 3 weeks ago. And it was amazing being back on a stage. I have to tell you, though, I was shaking like a leaf. For somebody who's been doing this for over 30 years, it was petrifying being back out in the real world. I don't know if it was more fear of me getting sick, or it was just weird. But I look forward to doing it again, because rock and roll, man.
Absolutely. It could have been a combination too, you know, because there's all of these fears going around in the world with the media and things like that. So yeah, but just great, absolutely great points, Jade. Like that is it's so great to hear these stories of people touring and you know, following their dreams and doing music full time and getting on the stage. Because I tell you, you know, I've always loved music a lot, but for me, it's always been like just behind the screen kind of thing. I'm way too scared to kind of like get up on stage and go in front of people and stuff like that. So I've always kind of stuck behind the screen. So I have so much admiration and respect for people like yourself, Pete and Jamie, you know, that go out there and actually tour and do gigs. So that is just awesome stuff to hear. So really, really great stuff. I do have another question. I want to start with you, Jade, on this one as well, because you know you do, I mean, you and Pete, you put out so much content. It's crazy. Like I was just wondering, how do you balance creating that much content with making new music and kind of everything else in your life?
I don't. That's the problem. I don't. And it's really hard to learn to do it. I've been talking about it on my channel recently a lot. I try and do these shows, these WART episodes, where I try and confront mental health and well-being on my channel. It's an important part of making music. And for me sitting there doing these shows and trying to get other people talking about this and trying to, because I can't help people with their mental health, but I think we can all help each other just by talking about this kind of stuff, you know, and
even that helps. Balance. Just talking it out helps.
Well, that's the basic premise of psychology. You go see a psychologist, you tell them your problems, they listen to you, they never give you an answer. They keep taking your money until you actually start listening to what you're saying and you go, oh, I can hear it finally. They never actually give you a solution. It's the moment that you have that pin drop and you go, oh, I can hear what I'm saying, what I'm doing wrong. So that's why talking about these things is important. And I've struggled recently because I put so much effort into the streams, and I care I so care about what people are making. I want to see people get better. That I am hitting a wall at the moment with my own creativity. And you know what? That's okay. Like, you have to come to that point where it's okay. You're allowed to have those moments, and you're allowed to go and do something else. Like if it's getting to that point, go play a video game, go for a walk, go watch Netflix, go do something else. Don't obsess over it, or you will just dig the hole deeper. Put your time into somebody else, pump somebody else up. You know what I'm saying? Because I am struggling with it at the moment, but I'm lucky too. And Pete, Jamie, yourself, we have the ability to do these shows, teach people how to use something, and at the same time, like I'm doing a Loopy Pro thing at the moment, I'm actually making a song in it, and I'm going to release that. So there are those moments where you're able to release something through doing this. It's just, yeah, sometimes you know you can output a lot more, but yeah, you put so much into everybody else. So the balance is really hard to find, and you may not ever find it. And you know what?
you just get better and better, maybe, hopefully over time. Hopefully.
And you may get better at it, and then you may fall back behind. Look, life is like this. It's up and down, and it's never going to be a straight line, because when it's a straight line, you're dead. But if you can keep that line just a little, if you can get the waves just a little bit less rough, you know, it's going to be smooth sailing. There you go. There's a sailing analogy and everything.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Jay. No, that's such a great point because YouTube people are, of course, YouTube content creators are famous for having burnouts and putting up that I'm quitting YouTube video or I'm going away from YouTube for a while video. That standard one that everybody seems to put up. I think I put up one myself at one point, like during 2020. I think I took a couple months off. So yeah, it's very, very difficult to find that balance. And for myself as well, I try to make it like 9 to 5, but there's always something to do. There's always something more that I want to create. There's always, it just seems like the list never ends. And when you get close, you think of something else to add. So yeah, the balance is really difficult. So I was just very curious, and it's so hard to find it. But eventually, hopefully, you can get better and better. But what you say, Jay?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure, please.
And I learned this from Pete. When you are doing the admin work, because there's a lot of that on YouTube,
yep.
or with anything that you do, find your music. Kind of like Ellie McBeal used to suggest, find some great music that you can put on to do that stuff. And like lately, what I've been doing is using the new Space Fields app, hitting one note on my keyboard and letting it just create all these really cool, weird noises. And I just sit here listening to weird noises because that's my comfort music. And I get so much done doing that than actually like listening to metal, which I listen to all the time when I want to release. But
I mean, absolutely,
have that music and that'll get you there.
Yeah, it's the lyrics, because like, for example, same thing, like I don't normally listen to some of the music that I listen to while I work, but it helps so much because there's no lyrics. So I listen to a lot of piano music, some classical music, right? Some stuff that you can throw on that will set your mood positive, but not distract you. So and that sounds really interesting. I never thought of just ambient stuff. I suppose that would be really great as well. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there for ambient stuff. So really, really great point on that. Space Fields, brand new app as well. I highly recommend it for creating these type of soundscapes and atmosphere. So very great. And of course, Jade, you've got an awesome video on that as well. So make sure everybody checks that out if you are interested in that app. Let's go ahead and move on to Pete. This question goes for you as well, Pete. So, you put on content almost every day. And, I still don't understand how you and Jay do it, but you do continue to put out quality content. And both you and Jade, it's not the same every day, right? It's always different. Sometimes you're playing music. Sometimes you're reviewing an app. Sometimes you're doing a tutorial. So it's always different. So my question to you is, how do you keep it unique? How do you keep each show unique when you do these things every single day? And again, how do you find that work-life balance as a YouTuber and still be able to like survive life?
Yeah, it is hard because I spent the best part of 4 years doing both. So working 40 hours of a day job and then doing probably close to 40 hours of YouTube work as well. And the idea was, as soon as I quit that day job, isn't it going to be easy that the YouTube job, and as you say, like every little bit of your day can be filled if you let it. So there's a lot of discipline required to actually completely let go. So I for instance, do a lot of walking where I just, when I'm sitting here in the studio, and I do my work and then I need a break, I'm like, okay, down tools and just get outside. And then I'll put on a podcast or I'll put on some music and I'll just walk for 2 hours and just get completely away from everything, completely refreshes me. And then I can come back and get back into it. But the key thing that I do that in terms of the content creation and how I actually get that is actively listening to what people are saying. So I don't have all the answers and I don't know from day to day what I'm going to create, but I have an ongoing list and it shuffles around based on what actually happens. So I read every single comment on every single video. And people think, that's insane. You get like thousands of comments. And I do. I get around about 40 to 50 comments a day, which takes me about an hour's work a day. But you know what that hour's worth of responding to comments does? One, it engages people that are on the channel because they know that I'm watching and they know that I'm listening to what they're saying. So they're going to watch more videos, tick. It gives me ideas and suggestions about what people are liking and not liking about the video content. And it provides me with content ideas for the future. So if I do a video about a particular thing in GarageBand, and then I get 4 comments on that video saying, I tried this, but I couldn't work out how to import multiple files into my GarageBand project, I'll go, guess what? Guess what's going on the list for tomorrow? Multiple files into GarageBand. So for me, it's just about that. And I've got a list of around about 300 things that are backlogged. So I'm not running out of ideas anytime soon as far as tutorial content and videos go. And I guess the other part of that is, and some people have been critical of me for this because they're like, oh, you've got 3 videos about the exact same topic. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Because 4 years ago, I created it this way. I made a 30-minute video that was boring as balls. And then a year ago, I made a 15-minute video that actually got to the point a little bit better, but still wasn't quite right. And now I've made a 5-minute video that just says, do this, timestamps, get in, get out. And different people like different things. And YouTube doesn't actually care. As long as you're not putting out the exact same video, like don't re-upload something you've done before, but YouTube doesn't care if you put out the same content, because the search engine will find it. If someone searches quick guide to GarageBand, they're going to get a 5-minute tutorial. If someone searches deep dive into Alchemy Synth, they might get my 30-minute Alchemy video. So not being afraid of that whole, I think it's the same with music. People worry that their music sounds like other people. Oh my God, I can't believe I made this. I use the same chord progression as Pearl Jam. Well, guess what? So have 1,000 other artists. And you know how many notes there are in the Western scale? 12. So you really don't have a lot of flexibility. Your song, your music is going to sound like other people's music, and that's okay. And the same with your content. Your content is going to be derivative of other people, and it's going to be derivative of your previous content. And that's okay too. I think if you just relax about that and do it, then that's good. And I think I won't rehash what Jade said, but I like all of her points about, making sure that you make the time, and that you have, when you're doing those boring admin stuff, spice it up a bit, keep it fun. And I know we talk about this a lot. Jade says, do what makes you happy and we all rise together. Yeah, I say if it's not fun, do something else, because at the end of the day, if I make the admin so bad, if I spend all my days trying to do brand deals and trying to manage finances and trying to invest in different hardware, whatever, why don't I just do a day job where I'm guaranteed an income? At that point, I might as well go back and work in the corporate world. I wanted to do this because of music, and I think I've seen some other creators fall into the trap of turning it too much into a business, of focusing too much on the business side. And, they're talking about, they're getting their sales funnels and they're selling their courses, they're doing all the things. You can do that. But if you're no longer actually passionate about music and you're more passionate about business, why bother being in the music business? It's not the best business to be in. It's certainly not the most profitable business to be in. So that was a long-winded way of saying, do you do you.
Absolutely great answer. Because I do struggle with that with myself, going between the business and the actual music part of it. And like Jade said, it's so great when, you can make tutorial videos that you can make music with, and then, have that song. But man, it's so difficult because there is so many things that you can do. It's an infinite, kind of black hole that you can jump into, which is e-commerce and internet marketing, right? It's kind of like this infinite thing that you go through, like you mentioned, sale funnels and all of these different things. And so I do kind of get swept up in that a little bit, trying to figure out if I need to do this. I'm like, well, this webpage says I could 10x my viewers if I did this, but so you get a little trapped into that, instead of, wait, well, which song was I going to make? What inspired me this morning again? Crap. And so it's really difficult to balance that for me. I've been trying to go back and forth, and I'm learning to get better and better at it, but yeah, it's definitely difficult. So I love those points, be really great. Let's go on to Jamie Mallender on this. Now, Jamie, you do a bunch of music stuff. Of course you have a channel and you teach music as well. So how do you find to balance? Plus you have you have multiple kids as well. So like, how do you find balance to still do music, but run a YouTube channel and do music for money as well, for example, like teaching?
Well, this is a really, really interesting question. You should ask me this at this time. And really, really interested in listening to what Jade and Pete had to say there, because for me, this last couple of weeks have been really tough. I mean, as you say, I have a family. I have a grown-up daughter as well with grandkids. And I teach. I'm gigging about 3 times a week at the moment. My little boy is autistic, so he's very demanding on my time. I'm recording things, and I'm very, very passionate about the YouTube channel. In fact, out of all the things that I do, it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. But of course, it's the least well paid, because I am, as of yet, still a very small YouTuber. And so it's been really, really difficult to fit everything in. And the workload just got really a bit heavy recently. And, one of the things actually that's been really bugging me is my Patreon account. I'm trying really, really hard to keep spending some time with that and feel that I'm giving something back to patrons, because I feel that's very, very important. But it started to worry me a bit. I've got an awful lot of things on. And I actually, this last few days, made myself quite ill because it just got too much. And the thing that I had to realize is a lot of this work is actually self-imposed. It's things that, it doesn't really matter when I release a video, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I have it ready for tomorrow or if it doesn't happen well next week, but I want to have it ready for tomorrow. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been having to take some time and think about how I'm going to reorganize and readjust everything that I do and find some balance. The time that I was streaming became very inconvenient. I had to give that time over to teaching because teaching pays and streaming on YouTube pays very little, unfortunately. And so I'm adjusting everything at the moment. And what I'm trying to do really is just to sort of regain some sense of actually what's important, the things in life that are really important, and just try and make a little bit of time for myself. You know, the most frustrating thing for me is that I haven't done anything creatively for myself now for quite some time because the apps take over. So I've got, very, very fortunate, as I'm sure we all are, in that we've got developers sending us apps. So I get the apps and then I feel like I need to do a video on the app. And I need to get it out pretty quick because they've just released this app and, they want some promotion. That's why they're giving it me free. And so I put this kind of demand on myself, that I must make the video and get it out there. And so I have this long list of things that's ever growing that I need to do. And so what I've been thinking is I need to stop trying to make a video or do a live stream with every app. I want to get back to being creative, and my videos are going to become about that. So the videos are going to be about being creative and teaching people more about how to record a full track, how to put a song together, rather than, here's an app, this is how it works, and I will include the use of the apps and how they work in that. But I really need to get back to that for my own sanity. And, just to feel like I'm going somewhere with it. And I think that really there's more to this. There's probably too much focus on new apps and what they do, and not enough focus on actually making music. Do you know what I mean with that? It's like, and it's just, I'm struggling for the word. I'm struggling for the word I'm looking for. What I mean is, like, the apps will help you get there, but really the creation of a song or where that comes from, or the creation of a piece of music and how to take it to the next level has to be more important.
Yep, definitely makes tons of sense. And that's kind of how I felt with the channel as well. When I started out, I was doing a lot of reviews and Let's Plays and things like that. But I focused more in recently on just actual CUBASIS tutorials of actually just teaching how to make music in various different ways, just the different parts of making music. Like, for example, going to do a how to use one-shots video. So just kind of getting back to some of the basics. And like my channel is more focused on newer producers, and I think it will be for a while to come. But still, like you say, it's so easy to get lost in the apps, because they just keep coming, they're coming out, and then we get codes and we feel like we got to do a video in every app, and it can get a little bit, you can get a little bit lost in the weeds with that. And so I chose to, instead of to kind of keep, because I was doing like 2 or 3 fully edited videos per week, and one was about like a new app, and then one was more towards that tutorial quick tip music type of thing, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had to just go straight only into actual tutorial videos. And I'd love so much to support these developers and make a video on every single app, because they work so hard and these apps are so amazing. But just like you, I gotta have my sanity still a little bit. I gotta have room for tutorial videos. I gotta have room to make some music. And so yeah, that is a little bit of a tricky thing to try to balance back and forth to see if you want to do more of the kind of the streamlined kind of stuff of actually making everything about the apps, or if you want to do more of the music tutorial stuff and making everything about learning how to make music. So I struggle with that as well. It's definitely difficult to find balance, and I found so much, what's the word? I found so much information from you guys on how you try to balance their lives as well. And I hope that the audience gets something from this as well, because I know I definitely did. It's very cathartic and very interesting to hear other content creator stories. In fact, there should probably be like, a YouTube hotline just for YouTubers, some kind of psychology hotline just for YouTubers, because I think
no more work. Can I add to the app thing with Jamie?
Oh, yes, please.
That as well, because my show is based on apps. And I do have a catchphrase. I've got a lot of catchphrases, but one of them is apps aren't Pokemon. You don't need them all. It's a very important thing to hold on to. And I'm not doing that to crap on developers and say, don't buy this. But we do fall into the trap of like, oh, but if I buy this app, it'll help my music. No, it needs to like accentuate your music. And just on what Jamie said, I used to try and, when an app came out, try and get on it that day or the next day. I've changed that up recently. I believe that it's okay to do a brand new app a week later. And the reason for this, and I'm pretty sure I'm down on the right mark with this. So if there are developers watching this, let me know if I am wrong. People are like sheep. Or they have a goldfish. They have very short attention spans. An app comes out and everybody's on it for the first few days. And then the sales go up and then they drop, because another app comes out. So it's not a bad thing to do a show on a brand new app a week later, because you're bringing interest back to it to bring those sales back up if people are going to buy it. So I don't rush anymore to make sure it's like on the release day or the next day or the third. It's okay to do it the next week, because there is so much going on that, we do get overloaded with apps. And I hope developers are okay with that, because I like to go back and do old apps as well, because, hey, some of those apps are not moving off the shelf because we're so focused on the new one. And there's heaps of old ones that are incredible, and we need to keep focusing on those and keep that income stream coming for these developers so they're not forgotten in the past. So
absolutely great. I mean, absolutely great points. And that's why I still try to feature new apps on the live stream. I just can't be doing fully edited videos anymore on the apps every single week. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do it on the live stream, and, no editing. Okay, that's fine. That way I can still support the developers, and still try to get some information out about their apps. So
I think,
Go ahead,
just
Pete.
to add to that too, I think the race to be first is something that we've seen a lot, and as there's more competition and more content creators and more app developers, this whole desire to be the first and this race to the bottom, almost like the Walmart effect, where if I can just be that 3 cents cheaper than the other person, then people are going to buy from me. And it's like you see this when apps come out and they're on like an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement, as some of you may know. When we get things to review and they're new, you get this non-disclosure agreement. And I've been in forums and conversations where people are like, oh man, the NDA pulls at 8 o'clock. So I've got to get my video out there at 8:01. Otherwise no one's going to watch it and the world's going to end. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. People are not there waiting. We as content creators think people are there waiting to click, going, oh, I want to see the freshest and newest video ever. They don't care. And they don't. And you know what? If you wait 5 days, but you put that extra effort into your tags, your thumbnail, your description, making sure you got your search engine optimization happening, and making sure you got a quality product, you're going to win in the end. Like, it's a long game. Pete, not a sprint.
Actually learning how to use it. You can't learn how to use it in 5 minutes as it drops.
Apparently, unless you're Gavinsky and just reads the whole manual and just
read the manual. But I want to make one more point, and then I know we can move on. But to Jamie, just around that stuff, because I went through a very similar phase to Jamie about a year ago, and I learned this amazing new word that I like to utilize, and I use it on the daily basis now, and it's called no. Because I think we get into this yes loop of yes, and because we as content creators, we're people pleasers. Like, well, I am anyway. I don't want to just put it out there to you folks, but we want people to be happy. We want to do the right things by our audience, by our developers, by our family, by our communities. Therefore, we want to give. But I've sort of learned this thing that if you say no, if you say yes with no actual ability to fulfill, you might as well say no up front, because a genuine, heartfelt, I'm sorry, but I can't up front is a lot better than I really meant to, but I just couldn't because I'm stressed, because I've got no time, and now I've got these other things to do. So all I did is I took the no that I knew I was eventually going to have to give at the end when I ran out of time and energy to do it, and put it right up the front to say, if you don't like no, just say not right now. So the amount of times I'll get an email from a developer now, and they'll be like, we've got this great new app, Pete, we think you'll enjoy it. And I'm like, cool, thanks for that. I've downloaded it. I can't guarantee when I'm going to get a chance to look at it. If I haven't done something in 3 months, feel free to email me again, and I'll have another look then. And that may sound a bit wanky. That may sound, oh, Pete's holier than thou. He's getting free apps and he doesn't even have time to check them out. But if I did every single free app that I got, if every single app that a developer gave me, I would lose my ever-loving mind. I would be sitting in the corner in the fetal position rocking right now because there's too much, and I wouldn't be creating music, and I wouldn't be focusing on making an income and feeding my children. So all of those things sort of come together, and hopefully that wasn't too harsh, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean,
it
takes
learning
time
to say no is hard.
Absolutely, Pete. Great point. Learn to say no, because it takes time to learn these apps too. Like, you see a new video come out, you see Sound Test Room doing a video on an app, and you're like, it's just magic. He knows it. It's like, no, he had to actually spend time. Jade spends time, Pete spends time learning these apps. Jamie and I spend time learning these apps first before we can do any type of tutorial video on them as well. So people seem to take that for granted a little bit as well, I think. But I think we can move on to the next question now. So great discussion so far. Great points. Jamie, we'll start out with you since we started out with Jade last time. And let me ask you, because I'm definitely curious, and I'm sure a lot of other up and coming musicians and producers are curious as well. What is the main differences for you, especially since we're in this crazy new world that we live in? What is the main differences for you from playing live shows to, like, for example, maybe playing for your Patreons or playing during a live stream? Like, what is the main difference for you? And how do you feel about each one? Is one better than the other?
Well, that's a really interesting question for me because I spent like Jay, from being a teenager up until now, I've never stopped in front of a live audience all the time. I've spent a massive amount of my life in front of an audience, from tiny crowds to enormous crowds, and feeling that feedback live from an audience is something that you are very much addicted to and love and crave. And then when lockdown happened and that suddenly stopped, then people started taking to social media, musicians started taking to social media to perform. And so, I'm sat in the house, I've got nothing to do, I've got no work, and Facebook is full of musicians like streaming. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, I could do that, right? I've got an iPhone, and so I kind of, I'd been doing a lot of gigs actually just before lockdown, solo acoustic. So I just got my solo acoustic set list out, and I had to go at it on Facebook, and at first it was very popular, and I got a lot of people tuning in to watch. But then there were so many people doing it, and the novelty wore off a little. But to be honest, I'll be absolutely honest. And if you think I'm terrible, right, you can tell me so, right? But I found it weird. I found it really, really strange, because to go from being in a room with a whole bunch of people and seeing their and feeling their immediate reaction from your performance, sitting in here playing to my phone, hoping that they like it, and being unable to read the chat that's streaming up the screen, because you can't really read that while you're performing, unable to gauge the response. You kind of do the whole thing, and then afterwards you can read it back and find out whether they liked it or not. But if I'm honest, the reason why I did it was because I suddenly had no income, and I was hoping that I might get some tips. And actually, they got very few tips, because the UK is not a tipping culture. We don't, like in a lot of countries, musicians depend on tips to make their fee. Like, I have some friends in America who say that their actual fee for playing like bar and grill type places is really poor. But there are tipping buckets across the edge of the stage, and with what they're getting there, they actually make a decent amount of money.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely have a tipping thing for any type of live musicians. People just play on the street and have a hat. So we are definitely a tipping culture in the US. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
Oh, no. The UK is not like that. If you ask for tips in the UK, you might as well be begging. That's
wow.
about the scene. So I did not do very well from that. And it kind of switched me off to it. I wasn't enjoying it anymore, stopped doing it. But then when I started live streaming on YouTube, talking about apps and how to make music with iPads and stuff, then that was really, really different. I did feel connected with people doing that. I suppose because I'm not sort of just sat doing a full performance. I'm talking and I can see the chat all the time, and I'm asking questions, people asking me questions. That interaction and that community of people that I've built up that regularly watch me, and it's nice, you start your stream and you see the familiar names pop up in the chat and you're asking people how they are today. And I feel connected with these people, which is strange because when I was streaming on Facebook doing my songs to people who would otherwise have been at my gigs, I mean, these are people that I know. Whereas in my YouTube streams now, I've never met any of them. I've never met one single person. And yet I feel this great, warmth, this sense of community. So, it's very, very different. But yeah, I am really, really enjoying streaming. I've had to take a little bit of time off of it just to sort of level my head out a bit. But I'll be back to it next week.
Well, great answer, Jamie. Like there's so much depth into the answer. I don't know how you guys are going to follow that up, but I'm super curious to hear because, there's just all these different nuances and interesting things, like the difference between just playing a gig live on live streaming versus actually, having a YouTube community there while you're live streaming, asking questions and stuff. That is a completely different experience. So I didn't even really realize such a thing like that. So that's really, really great feedback to hear, Jamie. I'm curious to hear what everybody else says as well. Pete, what are your thoughts on this, on the difference between playing, live gigs versus doing everything on YouTube and live streaming?
Yeah, well, full disclosure, I haven't played live in over a decade.
Oh,
so
wow.
I even before the inconvenience, I just wasn't getting out and playing live. I meant to, and I wanted to, and I had plans to, but people may find this surprising if they don't know me more intimately, but I am a card-carrying introvert. I get all of my energy from myself and my alone time. I find people scary and intimidating at times. So for me, the idea of standing out there in front of people where they can, throw stuff and actually hit me and get in my face and breathe on me and all that sort of stuff, even before C words and other things were a part, was not appealing to me. And the comfort of having a screen between myself and the rest of the world is actually really appealing. So, and I know I've chatted with Jade about this, and I know, look, the inconvenience the last couple of years has been really bad for people. I know there's been people who have lost loved ones, and I'm not going to make any light of any of that. But for me, it has been a very comfortable time because I love nothing more than being alone in my audio cave doing things. And it's been the best of both worlds because I've been able to engage with the online community through live streaming about creating music as well as actually playing music. And I'm at the point now where I do a weekly show called The Happy Hour, which is 1 hour of just acoustic, same as Jamie was saying. I get there and I play acoustic songs, and what it's meant for me is that there's a community of people, and it could be 20 or 30 or 40 people that rock up each week. There's some that are the same, but there's some new people that come along. Again, the tips aren't great, especially Australian-wise, because Australia's a bit like the UK. We don't really have a tipping culture, and so that's a little bit different. But for me, it's actually helped, and I think my guitar playing and my singing has really improved over that time. My repertoire of songs, I'm learning a new song or two every week to add to the repertoire, so that's really helped me, and it's given me that outlet, that creative outlet to actually do things. And to be honest, it has actually made me feel more confident. So I do still have a goal and an aspiration to get out there and do stuff live again. And I think this is actually be a good training for fellow introverts. I think it's a good training ground to do things like live streaming because you do have that extra safety blanket that you can just hit the stop button at any time and basically disappear. And I think having that parachute that you can jump out with is pretty nice. And the fact that you are doing things, and you can even do it to yourself. Sounds bad, but you can practice by live streaming by yourself to no one. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to do it because the first time you do it, you can do an unlisted stream, you can do a private stream, you can practice. Like, I don't know if anyone did this, but when I was a kid, I'd get a tape recorder and I'd pretend I was on the radio. Never played those tapes to anyone, but I would just pretend I'm a radio DJ and record myself and pretend I'm on the radio. And you can do the same thing with live streaming. If you're intimidated by this sort of stuff and you think, I'm not going to be good at it, do it by yourself. Do it completely alone. Wait for everyone else to leave the house and then do your live streaming and pretend no one's watching. And then as your confidence grows, you can start doing it. It's like I say to people, it's like sports people. You don't go out there and just sort of perform in the NBA before you've taken your first shot. You practice by yourself 1-on-1 on the court with a friend, and then you practice 3-on-3 and then 5-on-5. And then eventually you get better and better and better. It's the same with your music. Your confidence grows the more you do it. So I know that went off on a weird tangent, but yeah, hopefully that helps explain things a bit.
That was awesome, man. Because it's true. Because I'm an introvert as well. I'm born in July, so I like to stay in my shell. A bit of a crowd there, and so I definitely know what that's like. And like I was saying earlier, I much prefer that screen buffer in front of me, and that's why I have so much admiration for people who just don't have that problem. And so to see other people like yourself, Pete, who have that same issue and still are able to perform, still are able to get their creative outlet, and still have an audience, even though there's a screen there, that is just a really great benefit. And like you say, it can be a really great training ground, but you can take it all the way up to 100K subs like you did if you want. So that is just fantastic advice. Jade, I want to hear from you as well. What do you think about this? Because you've played a ton of shows, toured all over the world. What are your thoughts on the differences and your preferences and the experiences of playing live versus playing on YouTube?
As a live performer, I've always had a reputation here in Australia from the people who've known me in bands that I was always a maniac on stage, from, climbing things, jumping off things, cutting myself with machetes.
Rock and roll, people, rock and roll.
Very dangerous front person. I always really wanted to put on a crazy show so people remembered me. My bands are always, very zapperish and very out there, from death metal to funk and stuff. So I always was outside of the box, and I loved doing that stuff. But the injuries I would sustain from that were quite heavy. And I'm not as young as I used to be. And I have a very serious chronic illness. So I can't do those things live anymore. I definitely can't do the festivals like I used to do. So when all this inconvenience happened, the main thing, because I couldn't do live shows, my health mostly permitting for live shows, I think I met up with Pete in Adelaide. I went hung out with Pete, and so we've met in the real world. And I knew he was doing his happy hour on his channel and is quite successful. And I said to Pete over lunch, it was like, I think you're doing a live show as well, but I'll do it before your show, and I'll be the opening hour. I'll be your opening act. And then I kind of looked at it like a gig. I'm the warm-up for Pete. Pete's got the bigger audience. I'm the smaller audience, a smaller YouTube channel. Let's see how that goes. And I think, Jamie touched on this earlier. I'm a small YouTube channel as well. I don't make a lot of money. I rely now on my opening hour each week. And I think because I've got all the gear to do everything looks great, show looks great, sounds great. What I've had to try and do is convey that maniac live performance. Even though I'm just sitting in a chair, you throw everything at it. Like I'm sweating like a dog. I'm throwing myself around. You really give it like it is a live stream, like a live gig, like you're on a stage. And people have responded to it by, sending the super chats. It's not a lot, but man, it is a lot when it comes to the end of the month for me. That's a lot of the money that makes up my YouTube and gets me over that, that threshold you have to get before you make money. It's still a challenge to get there every month for a channel like mine, but it's incredibly, it's working doing that. And the other struggle with doing these weekly live performances is when you have your own music, you start to get this, oh my, I'm playing my own songs again. I don't have that many songs. People are going to get sick of hearing these songs over each week. How am I going to make them different? So then you do an acoustic unplugged version. Then you do a version when you're singing to your backing tracks of your songs and you've had to remove all the vocals. And then you do a completely different version with heaps of reverb on it. And then you're like, oh my God, people are going to get sick of this. So I've had to resort to doing, all right, this is a classic covers song. So I'm singing to a bunch of karaoke tracks, and then I'm doing covers with an acoustic. And that's when you start getting hit with copyright claims. So you rely on those super chats because you're going to get, as I said, claimed up the wazoo. And that's where you look at it like a gig. So what, and I try not to beg for super chats, and say, hey, feel free to super chat. Or as I sold this from Pete, super chats are appreciated, but never expected. But they are a big part of my channel. And I think, people understand that. I think they know by, that you're a small channel and people respond to it. And look, I've got to the point now, as I said, I did a live gig recently. And look, it was guaranteed money. There was parking passes. I got lunch money, all these things that I used to love about doing live performances. Security came and they had somebody carry all my gear for me, help me set up. It was wonderful, but it was a lot of work. And I was so beat by the end of it. And I felt like I only did 20 minutes on stage. And I was like, wow, there was so much anxiety with it. And then when I did my opening hour 2 days later, I did the exact performance that I did at that live gig, and it was so less stressful. So relaxed sitting here in front of my room, knowing I'm in control of everything. I don't have to worry about anybody else. I have the power to make this sound good and be good. And the only thing I don't have control over is what people decide to donate. And if you just forget about that and just put everything into it, people will come to the party. I mean, we have a great community, great people who do support us. They do see the work that we do, and they do come to the rescue. So I'm ever so grateful for them. But yeah, I love the live performances. I love throwing myself around in this chair, so much so my chair split, the arm's broken from me banging it and jumping around. It's all rock and roll from a chair. I love it. I'm like the Stephen Hawking of rock and roll. It's brilliant.
Off from a chair. I love it, Jay. So if you guys want to see what Jade is talking about, definitely make sure to tune in to her performances. I think you said every Saturday, every weekend?
Saturday, your time, because you live in the past.
Yes.
Sunday for me. Yeah.
For people who live in the past, like me in the US, it is every Saturday. So definitely make sure you tune into that. Jamie, you need to do a show too. So then we have a whole lineup of 3 people every single week. That would be pretty cool. But great points, Jade. Thank you so much for that and for all the information about the history and everything like that. I love listening to your guys' experience. Really, really cool stuff. I know I don't want to keep you too long. Maybe we can just do one final question around with everybody, because I am kind of excited to hear what your thoughts are about this as well. And we'll start out with you, Jade, and then go back around. So Jade, is there anything that you're looking forward to or that excites you about the iOS music production, community and ecosystem? Is there any new apps coming out, or is there any new technologies? Is there any, like maybe the M2 or some kind of thing that you're looking forward to next, or that's coming, that you hope that's coming pretty soon in the iOS music community? What do you think?
Absolutely. Look, all right. So we talked about this on my show that was just before your show today. Me and Pete did a rant show where we just rant and get angry about stuff like 2 old people yelling at clouds. But look, all the new gear, all the devices that are out, they're awesome. And they just keep getting better and better. All the new apps that keep coming out, they're awesome. They keep getting better and better. All the artists that I get to converse with and interview and hang out with every day just keep getting better and better. Apple, I just want one thing from you. That's all. If you're watching, and I'm doing this for the developers and I'm doing this for us too, bloody release the amount of RAM that a developer can use in their apps. It is no point giving us all these devices with 16 gig of RAM, M1 chips, if you are going to throttle the amount of RAM that they can use. I think it's 5 gig.
Well, they've recently updated that so the developer can request up to 12 gig per app, but it used to be 5 gig. It used to be 5 gig.
There we go. But this is the thing that Apple sit on way too long. They release this stuff and then they throttle everything. They think that we can't handle it. Like they go, here's the amazing stuff, but we're going to treat you like children. Please, Apple, that's all I want from them. Stop treating us like children. We're even your basic consumer who just uses an iPhone for text and stuff, they are more savvy than you believe. Give us a bit of leeway. We want to use your devices and your products to the max, but there's still these training wheels. It really upsets me because, I want to push these things to the limit, and I want to keep promoting that we live in an amazing world. We live in the future, as Pete John says. We can touch these devices. We can take them wherever we want. And I just want to see the restrictions drop across everything. It's like, how long did it take for them to give us a Files app?
Oh my goodness.
Just the most simplest things. They continue to hold back. And I do understand there's been times when they have held back on these things, and it's been for a reason. They want to make sure it works. But, that this restriction thing, even like just saying the developer has to reach out and unrestrict this. Lose that, man. Just open it up, but just let the developers just make their magic so they can release it, and hopefully they can make some goddamn money.
For sure, for sure. And I don't know if you saw Jacob Pack's recent video, but he made a great point as well, where actually the CPUs, we actually have like 8+ CPUs on these crazy M1 chips now, but most of the developers aren't actually taking advantage of the multi-core. There's only a few apps out there that are. I know for sure, of course, CUBASIS 3 has multi-core rendering now that you can enable by default. But there's just not enough apps, I think, that's taking advantage of the multi-core. Like you said, we want to, as consumers and as musicians and producers, we want to crank these things to the max. We want to add tons of plugins. We want to do all of these things. But, sometimes either Apple or the developers don't quite get there yet. Things take a little bit longer. For example, like when AUV3 came out, I don't think the very first app used that until 2 years later. I think it came out in 2016, and I don't think the first app, a really big app, took advantage of it for a couple of years. So, yeah, unfortunately, I feel you. I feel your pain. It does sometimes feel like things are taking too long, but I think that if we look back in the grand scheme of things, and you look back at each one, you look back and say, well, I guess that was about the right amount of time. But the Files app, Jade, the Files app is such a great point, because we could have had that a long
for sure.
time.
And they're all about creativity, and hey, if you put any restrictions on creativity, you're going down the wrong path, man, because the most amazing creative things throughout history came from people stepping outside of the box, taking chances, taking risk. And Apple needs to take more risk, I do believe, for the creative types. They've already got the consumer market licking their backsides like lollipops. They're buying the things, smashing the screens, going in and getting it replaced, smashing another screen, getting it replaced. They've got that market covered. But the creative types, take the reins off, man. Let us go. We want to go.
Absolutely. Great points, Jade. Great points for sure. I think we can move on to Pete now. Pete, what are your thoughts on maybe what Jade said too, but also what your own opinions on what are you looking forward to? Maybe something in the future, either an app or a new technology, or maybe a new feature in iOS. I know a lot of people are looking forward to the ability to multitask a little bit easier. I know I was definitely happy with the iOS 15, where they put the dots on the top of the app, so you can just tap on that and move it over instead of having to do all these crazy slide gestures. Are there any type of new iOS features maybe as well that you're looking forward to, or anything at all? Let me know.
Yeah, I have a bit more of a basic view in that I love simple, and I've realized that my biggest challenge over the last 3 years is that I kept adding complexity to my systems, to my processes, to the amount of apps I was using, to the amount of plugins I was using. So I've actually gone on a bit of a hippie, let's strip it all back to basics kind of journey in the last year, as Jade knows. And it's great that it came at just the right time. Jade started her show just as I'm like, I'm done with apps. I'm sick of apps. There's too many apps. I just want to create music. And I think that's what I really want to, I guess, push past in the iOS community, which is that if you love apps, and if you love noodling on music, and if you love pressing buttons on synths and making cool sounds, absolutely more power to you. But I get emails and messages and people commenting every single week just saying, I want to make more music and I don't know how to make more music. And then I talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, I just bought these 4 apps and I'm trying to use, I'm like, stop buying apps. It's almost like you need to go on an app buying diet where you just like buy no apps for 3 months, but make 3 songs. Just do that. Just create music. So in terms of what I want to see with iOS, I think I think we live in the future. I think it's ridiculous that I can carry my phone around and I can like walk around. I'll go walk down by the river this afternoon and I'll probably be mixing a song on my phone or editing a video on my phone in LumaFusion. So that's kind of ridiculous that we can do all those things. But I also think that, look, the good signs are coming from the Mac world in that they are going back to actually giving tools to creators. So when I talked about this on Jade's show, but when Johnny Ive was in charge of design with Apple, everything had to be thinner and lighter and sexier and smoother and less functional. So we got to the point where iPads are too thin now, I believe, and were too light, and they just couldn't get the stuff in them. And MacBooks, like the MacBook Pro, the 2016 MacBook Pro with the touch bar, and it was a nightmare. But now you got the M1 Max, with you got these extruded minis. You got the M1 Studio, which there's no way Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs would probably not have approved of that design because it is not sexy enough. It's too chunky. It doesn't look all cool and slick. But you know what it's got? Ridiculous guts, complete power for creators. 64, 128 gig of RAM. It's got like 14. It's just got all the cores and all the process. Anyway, so it's overkill. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that. Obviously, we've got the M1 in the iPad Pro. We've now got the M1 in the iPad Air. And as soon as they fix the problem Jade said there, and that developers actually start utilizing the multiple cores and start utilizing the RAM, we are going to be at the point where we can actually have a lot of the stuff we have on desktop. Like, the gap is closing. When I first got into GarageBand iOS, the difference between GarageBand, like GarageBand on a Mac was already treated as a toy by producers, because they're like, oh, that's just that thing that Steve Jobs came out and you press buttons and it was actually labeled the DAW, or the music production for people who don't play music. I think that was a challenge. It's taken us 15 years to try and remove that nomenclature. But iOS, it was exactly the same, because iOS came out and you could only do 16 tracks. You could only do 16-bit audio. It really wasn't the best. And I think what people haven't realized with iOS is it has grown. In the last 5 years, it's grown to the point now where if you have a song produced in iOS, whether you're using CUBASIS or Aria or GarageBand or whatever, it's 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit audio that you've produced, that you've plugged in your audio interface, your microphones, your guitars. It's the same gear that you would plug into a Mac or a PC, you're plugging into your iPad or your iPhone. And at that point, it's ones and zeros. At that point, if you've got an analog to digital converter and it's converting it to ones and zeros at 24-bit, at 192 kilohertz, or whatever you're doing it at, it's going to be the same audio. And that's what I think people miss out on, that it's not about the platform, it's about the song. And I like to say that you could have $1 million studio with all the outboard gear in the world and a crap song, and you know what you got? A crap song. Or you can have a great song recorded in $1 million studio with all the outboard gear, or recorded on your phone in GarageBand. It's still a bloody great song. So I'll finish with that to say that iOS producers, don't feel bad. You're not the poor second cousins of desktop producers, because once your music's out there, you know what the end user cares about? The song, not how you produced it.
Absolutely great points. I mean, if you look at the history, you can see that there actually has been an increasing amount of songs created in GarageBand. You know, even like that big famous Rihanna song. I forget the name of the song now, but it's definitely made in GarageBand using a GarageBand drum sample. Yeah. And so I think as time goes on, people are going to be more accepting of software like GarageBand, because it does allow you to do more things these days. And I think all those people that are using GarageBand on the Mac are going to eventually figure out that, hey, guess what? You can also use it on your iPhone or iPad, and they're just probably going to move to that because it's simpler, for the most part. So it is going to be interesting to see if there is going to be the shift from more traditional like laptop stuff to more GarageBand mobile stuff on the iOS, because I think there is a greater demand than people currently estimate. I think it's completely underestimated, the amount of people that actually do want and can make music. So I think that we're going to see that curve really get achieved in this decade. And by the end of the decade, I think it'll be completely commonplace in the producer community world to be like, oh yeah, I made this on iOS, and they're not going to blink an eye. But right now we're still waiting for all the big producers, or at least some big producers, to do that, so that we can have the sign off, right? Because most people are, like you say, like I think somebody said, I think it was Pete said, or somebody said, most people are kind of sheep. They like to follow and like to have everything be okay, to make sure it's safe and okay before we try to jump on it. But there will come a time where big, huge producers will be using this, and everybody will know that it's a thing, and it won't no longer be viewed as such like a toy. And this happens every single time. Same with Pro Tools. When it first came out, people thought it was a toy, and then a big, huge song came out on it. Ricky Martin and stuff. So eventually, just everybody does figure it out. But I think it takes some time, and I'm really hoping by the end of this decade for sure that people are going to catch on. So we'll see how it goes. But Jamie, I really want to hear from you as well. You're the last person here to answer the last question on this podcast. So let's see what you got to say, Jamie. Is there anything that you're looking forward to, either in technology wise, maybe a new iOS peripheral or iOS app or iOS software, something that's going to make the ecosystem better? What are your thoughts?
Well, my answer actually is very, very simple. I recently got, as you know, the 2021 M1 1 terabyte model. And when I got it, right, so obviously it's a big improvement on my last iPad. So I couldn't wait to dig in and get CUBASIS 3 open and see how much more I could do with that iPad than the 6th gen iPad I had before. Now, bear in mind, this is a vastly superior iPad. And the difference was not that much. It was very but then just a few days after I bought it, the CUBASIS 3.4 update landed, which introduced the multi-core processing, or fixed the multi-core processing.
More like fixed it, because they actually introduced it earlier, but it was a terrible, terrible implementation. In fact, Jamie and I were telling people to turn it off by default.
Yeah, I remember that.
In fact, it was one of the most common things that either of us typed online was just switch that off, right? Well, now I'm typing, switch it back on, because the difference since that landed is absolutely amazing. I've been able to do things in CUBASIS 3 that I just never would have imagined were possible. Last night I was producing a track, and I had an instance of Slammer, right? And I was thinking how cool it would be if Slammer had multi-core, had multi-bus out, because it doesn't have multi-bus out. So I thought, you know what I'll do is I'll copy it down, right? Copy the MIDI down, and then I'll just solo each drum, right? In each instance. So then I've got all the drums on separate tracks. And I just kept on, and I thought sooner or later it's going to fall over, right? Right. And I just kept on copying 12 instances. And it's absolutely fine, and it's hardly touching the CPU. And I've got a whole bunch of other stuff open. And in fact, I haven't as yet managed to make CUBASIS 3 crash or fall over itself since that point in 3.4. Well, since 3.4.1 update landed, when they corrected a few little issues that came with 3.4. So personally, as far as the future of iOS, I am just looking forward to some time to get stuck into really making some songs, now that I've decided I'm going to go back to focusing on that, to making some songs and seeing just how much I can achieve with CUBASIS 3 now. I've believed for a long time that it is possible. In fact, it's not just a belief. I mean, I've proved it. It is possible to make a professional sounding track with an iPad. And I was doing that with my old iPad. So I would just want to see what level I can take it to with this. And the other thing I'm looking forward to is, of course, is more and more producers gradually realizing what the iPad can actually now do, because there is this very, very common misconception, as you've already touched on, where a lot of people believe that to be serious about music production, you really have to have a desktop. Well, I mean, I have both. I've got a great desktop. I've got the CUBASIS 12. I've got Cubase 12 Pro. I've got some great gear, and I've got some fantastic software on there. But I can't produce a better song on the desktop setup. I don't get a better sound quality. I have different software. And yeah, there are more features in Cubase than there are on CUBASIS 3. But Cubase desktop version has been around for a very, very long time and costs a phenomenal amount more. In terms of the sound quality you can achieve, there is no difference, So the iPad is a very, very realistic option for producers to look at making tracks. And I believe that for, in particular, a singer-songwriter type of artist can get an awful lot out of it. And you hardly see any of those kinds of artists using it at all. But we will. That will gradually change. It's inevitable. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of those people coming over, and I'm looking forward to helping them out, I guess.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our community growing, because we have seen it growing steadily but surely. All the numbers keep going up on the Facebook groups, on the Reddit forums, on the YouTube channels, just everywhere you kind of look, you can kind of see that the numbers are slowly but surely going up there. And so I think that's really important that people are starting to catch on. And beyond even music, there's just so much you can do with the iPad, edit 4K video, as Pete was saying. There's just so many things. And I also love what Pete said is that, once you have a modern audio interface like an Apollo or something, and then an AD converter, it's just ones and zeros. at that point. There's no difference whether you're whether the audio is coming or being produced on the desktop or the iPad. If you have the same actual gear, it's going to be the actual same sound. So there's going to be no difference. And I think people are going to wake up to this, and the stigma will start to go away, as it did for everything else, as it did for computers, and then eventually, FL Studio. And remember, that was just used to be Fruity Loops, and now every single trap song is produced
playing with Fruity Loops. Yeah.
Like literally every single trap song is produced in FL Studio. So at this point, 99.9%. So it just takes some time for for the world to figure out. And of course, what was a big part of that was YouTube, right? The YouTube videos and the YouTube community helped people realize, channels like BusyWorks Beats, they helped people realize the power of FL Studio. And I think channels like us will help, like ours, will help people realize the power of the iPad and really the power that you can, the power of the human imagination, and how it can be just captured now just directly with your device wherever you are. And that's just super powerful. So great points, Jamie. I think we can end it there. Absolutely great conversation, everybody. I just want to ask everybody where we can find out more about you. So we'll go around the table. We'll start out with you, Jade. Where can we find out more about you and what you do?
howtoapponIOS.com, jadestar.com.au. You can find me on YouTube at Jadestar. And Facebook is We All Rise Together is the Facebook group for the channel. That's about it.
We all rise together. I still love that slogan. It's still my favorite slogan, Jade, out of everybody's YouTube slogans. I think that's still my favorite. I love it. I just stand behind that whole belief. That's what all of our channels are about, is getting information out there so that we can all rise together. So fantastic job today, Jade. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate it. Mr. Pete Johns, let's see, where can we find out more about you and what you do, sir?
Feel free to just Google Pete Johns. I'm finally the #1 search result on Google, so take that, other Pete Johns.
There is only one Pete Johns.
There is only one. But no, go to studiolivetoday.com. That's your one-stop shop. From there, you can check out the YouTube channel. You can check out the Facebook groups and my personal Facebook pages, and Twitter, which I ignore most of the time, as Vortex knows. But don't message me there. Just email me. But yeah, studiolivetoday.com. And thanks again for having me on the show today.
Absolutely. And of course, make sure to check out everybody's Patreon here as well. Everybody does have a Patreon. And as they said, that this is a big part of an independent content creator's revenue is Patreon. So definitely make sure you sign up for there, especially when we're trying to do shows where everything gets copyrighted. It gets crazy. So, we rely on those Patrons. So thank you, everybody who has subscribed to those. And finally, Mr. Jamie Mallender, the one and only, where can we find out more about you, sir?
Well, I am all over the internet, and mine's not a very common name, so if you just type in Jamie Mallender, you will find loads of stuff about me. But the best thing to do is go to www.jamiemallender.co.uk, and there are links there to everything. Although I must warn you, at the moment, my website is terribly old-fashioned and out of date. The content is current, and it's the text is a bit small. Basically the whole thing wants a massive overhaul, but that's just another job on the list. It will get done.
Yet another job that we have to do, all the admin stuff that content creators have to worry about. I wish we could just outsource it all, but we can't yet until we all have 100K subs like Pete. But until then, I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining us again. Really appreciate it. I had a great time. And of course, we'll be back again next month with another roundtable. We always try to have new guests and new people on here to try to get some conversation going and talk about and discuss topics that are important to the iOS music community and their members. So thank you again so much, everybody, for joining. And until next time, everybody, keep talking music. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we now have over 100 fully edited mobile music tutorial videos. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our channel right inside of CUBASIS on our iPad. Plus, we also have a bunch of free sample packs, guides, and more at our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. And so if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iPhone or iPad, then definitely make sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel that we know you'll love.